Hello, entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. This is Dave with Founder Sensei. Hey, how is everybody doing today? We are here to talk about the differences between established businesses and startups. And this is really an important insight that it took me several years to come to. I started my career working at big companies. I studied engineering at Purdue, and they have this great co-op program where you can work for big companies while you're getting your engineering degree. So I had one session at Dow Chemical, two sessions at 3M, great corporate innovator, and then a session at Procter and Gamble, another great corporate innovator, before I graduated. And by the way, there are acorns falling right now out here in the lake house. So if I get hit in the head, we know that's a sign from the universe to speed things up. So anyway, I started my career there, and then I got really interested in the marketing and business aspects of how do you take technology and turn it into a really profitable business. So I went to business school, went to Harvard Business School, was honored to go there, and then I went back to the corporate world on graduation, worked at AT&T Wireless, did some really great stuff there, Experian, and then YesMail, who was a email marketing company that went public in the mid-90s, and then I joined in 2001 to turn around the business, make it profitable, and sell it, which we did successfully to InfoUSA. And then I started doing startups. So I've built 8 startups, 2 service companies, 6 technology companies. I love startups. And so I have this somewhat experience-based perspective on the differences between these two models. And I came across an illustration on steveblank.com years ago that really resonated. So I've taken kind of elements of that illustration and put it into a different slide. So let's get to the slide for a second. So if you look at this illustration, what it's trying to show is the difference, the fundamental differences between these two things. On the left, you've got startups. And startups essentially are searching for a new business model. And the reason this gets a lot of attention these days is that it turns out that technology itself does not create all of the value when a unicorn startup is created. That most of the value comes from using that technology and putting it into a new business model that creates value for customers. So business model innovation, business model design is actually the thing that creates a lot of value. And if a good example is Uber. Uber did not invent mobile technology. They did not invent GPS. They did not invent any of the technologies that they use, really. And they've developed some technology, but the fundamental technologies were developed by somebody else. So what Uber did is they put it all together into an innovative business model that really disrupted the taxi industry, the transportation industry. So much so that the regulations couldn't even conceive of what they were doing. So that's a good example, and I think you see that in most of the startup unicorns that have been created. So essentially, the point is when you're starting in a startup, you're searching for a business model. And what you're really trying to do is invent a new one. So you are not sure what to do, so you run experiments. You learn from those experiments about how customers behave and respond to what you're doing, and then you pivot if you find out that you were wrong about certain assumptions. And eventually you keep iterating through this process, this cyclical process, until you find product market fit, and then find a scalable path to customers, and then boom. If you're able to achieve that, you'll start to grow really fast. So let me contrast that for a second with my corporate experience. And I think everybody who's worked for an established business kind of comes from this side, this right side of the chart. So an established business, they're really not trying to invent a new business model because they're established. They already have one. It's working. It's paying for all this stuff. What they're trying to do is execute and improve on it. And so we talk a lot about search and execution, but I really think the better words that I'm going to start using are invent and improve. So on the corporate side, established business, they're trying to improve his business model. And so they are set up organizationally, culturally to execute an existing game plan. And what do they do to execute? Well, they develop forecasts, they develop plans. So if we have 100 sales reps and we know that they follow this roadmap, they're going to generate X amount of revenue. Let's hire 100. Let's hire 10 more sales reps, and try to grow this business a little bit every year, and get more efficient in what we're doing, so we can improve margins and improve net income. So that's what big companies do. So look at what the big company. If you're in that improve mindset, there's several requirements. You have to have a proven process. Like, you have to have a business model that works, obviously. And if it does, hey, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just execute this plan. We know that it works. If we do these 3 steps, we're gonna achieve profitability. You also have to have good soldiers. You have to have people that are good at following orders. Like, if I say, hey, follow this game plan, they'll do it. They're not going to sit there and debate with me endlessly about how I think it's better. No, listen, man, we've proven this. We know what we're doing. Just do it. And not to say you can't improve things. You're certainly open to suggestions, but you're not going to, sell insurance and all of a sudden start, developing wicker baskets or something crazy like that. It's just not going to happen. So you need good soldiers. You also need field generals. You need field generals that can lead these troops in organized fashion, and they're marching in formation. And the field generals, of course, have standard operating procedures and so on and so forth. So there are rules, there are best practices. Since this process is defined, you can assign metrics to it. How much revenue per sales rep should we be targeting? Is that number going up or down? How do we make it more efficient? How do we get more productivity out of our reps? And then you also have, sorry, I'm having a little bit hard time breathing. Oh, routine, mastery, and discipline, right? Routine, mastery, and discipline. I want to be really, really good at this process. I want to study it. I want to practice it over and over and over again until I achieve mastery, right? Mastery. And then, of course, I want to have confidence. I'm confident that this process is going to work. So if you add up all these things, really, this is what I learned in business school at Harvard Business School. MBA, Harvard invented the MBA degree. This is really their heritage, is what they're good at. Harvard Business School was actually created from a grant by the U.S. Army to develop logistics, and that was essentially the foundation of Harvard Business School. They invented the MBA. They generate more case studies than anybody else on the planet. A lot of business schools, most business schools use their case studies and what comes out of the Harvard Business Review. So they are the institution of the MBA. So let's look at the other side of the equation for a second, startups. So if you are trying to invent something new, and you don't know what to do, there's tremendous uncertainty. So what do? You run experiments, and you kind of search for what the answer is. So failure is going to be part of the process. It is part of the process. If you think about a lab environment, you go into that lab, you're expecting to see, stuff to blow up every now and then, hopefully in a controlled fashion, but there are unexpected things that are going to happen. And that should be expected. The unexpected should be expected because you're doing things that have never been done before. So the types of people that love this environment are explorers. Explorers. I am an explorer. I love, love, love to do new things. Love to do new things. I don't think there's anything wrong with mastery, but for me, I want to do new things. That stimulates me. That gets my dopamine cranking. And of course, these people are also kind of mad scientists. They're a little bit crazy because stuff is blowing up, and because they kind of come across as being very fearless. I don't think they are fearless. I think they have fear. They just know the value of failure, and so they're willing to pay the price. So they control their fear because they know it's worth it to go out and fail because of what you're going to learn. Of course, they do experimentation. They're learning. The learning generates insights about customers, about products, about how these two work together. There's a real openness within someone who's inventing because they don't know the answer. So they're open. I'm open. Hey, I'll try anything once. Why not? They're flexible. They kind of, if they try something and it doesn't work, there's no point in holding on to that idea if it's been shown to be not effective. Let's move on to another thing. What suggestions do you have? They're also very humble, I think, because they've been proven wrong so many times. They know it's not really about whether you're right. And then they have to have faith, right? You have to have faith. Whenever there's uncertainty, why are you doing something that's so uncertain? Well, I just have faith that we'll be able to figure this out. Or I have faith that this problem is significant enough that it's worth solving. So if you look at this left side of the equation, really what it is, I like to call it a masters of business creation. So this is the part that precedes the MBA. And this is what a lot of traditional business schools, don't get. Now, to Harvard's credit, they've changed their curriculum a lot. I would argue, though, that this should be a separate degree, and I've made this case to them before, and they completely disagree with me. But I do think it's a separate skill set. But whether it's one degree or another degree, at Founder Sensei, I feel like we're teaching the MBC, the Masters of Business Creation. But I think the key point here to remember is that most people are either good at one or the other. And so for you personally, through experience and through self-reflection, I think it's worth it to spend some time, spend some energy figuring out which model you are better suited for. And if you're not sure, I would try both and see. I started when I was young. I was an entrepreneur. I had a paper route. I started my own painting business. I did all these kind of things naturally, these entrepreneurial ventures. And then I got into the institutions, essentially like college, and was on this career path in corporate and educational institutions. Really kind of beat the entrepreneurship out of me. And then it wasn't until later where I figured out, wow, I don't really fit in to the corporate hierarchy as much as other people do. I like to just run like, oh, here's a new thing. I'm going to go play with this shiny new object. And if it doesn't work out, it may not be good for my career, but I'm not really thinking about that because I'm not concerned at all about politics. I'm concerned about impact. And so anyway, that led me to entrepreneurship again, or I would say kind of rediscovering. So for me, I am on the inventing side, and I think it's mostly because I'm an explorer. I love to do new things, so I'm always going to be in that side. But I do see tremendous value of both. You have to have both. And that's kind of the last point I want to make. It's not that one side is better than the other. It's not. And people will romanticize entrepreneurs that create businesses from nothing. And these are great accomplishments, and they should be proud of themselves. But it's not that that one is better than the other. You actually need both. A great example of this is Facebook. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know him, but I put him in the event category. He's famous for saying, if we're not running around breaking stuff, we're not doing it right, or something to that effect. So he's the inventor, right? The visionary guy, experiments, tries, doesn't really care if it works, doesn't care if it fails. He cares if it works. Doesn't mind if it fails, because he knows that investment is worth it to discover what is going to work. And then really it wasn't until Sheryl Sandberg, who is an HBS alum, she graduated a year before me, I'm pretty sure, and it wasn't until she came in with all of her MBA training and Google background and AdWords that she turned that into a business. So she partnered up with Mark. I think he was incredibly smart in realizing what his shortcomings were and brought in someone who built a business around what he had done. And so I love that example. That's such a good example because I do think you need both. Now, if Sheryl or someone like her didn't come into Facebook, I don't think Facebook would be what it is today, because you need both. You can't just be reinventing stuff because you'll never get anywhere. What you need to do is you need to invent something great, and then you need to switch gears, right? From inventing to improve. Okay, now improve. The other way people say it is from search to execution. But again, I prefer the terms now, invent or improve. So we invented a great model, awesome. We've got some data that it's working. Boom, now we're switching into improve mode. We don't want you to totally recreate it. Don't reinvent it because we know it's great, but you can make improvements on it, right? So there's degrees of change that are appropriate for that situation. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. This video was probably too lengthy, but I do think it's valuable for a bunch of different customers and individuals who are dealing with innovation issues. And then I'm going to follow this up with a couple other videos which describe the implications for 3 different types of people, whether you're a corporate innovator, whether you're a new entrepreneur with MBA background or corporate experience, or whether you're an entrepreneur that likes to just create startups. So I think all 3 groups, this chart has some significant implications, what I'm going to get into later. So hopefully that was helpful. Until next time.